Okay. Hey everyone, it's Denise. Thanks for being with us today for a morning of support. I'm going to end our poll. And our poll was, my manager understands my caregiving responsibilities. Obviously, I went past the word count in the poll. And our response was sometimes. And I think, oh gosh, sometimes, and a few yeses and a few nos. Okay. So Brandy, who was slated to present during this time slot, is actually having a family emergency. So I'm going to pivot and do two presentations within this next 50-minute time slot. Just a little bit about me. I started one of the very first online caregiving support groups or support websites in 1996, and I managed it for 24 years and then focused on training and leadership development for family caregivers, which is what I do right now. I helped my mom for 7 years until her death this past August, and she actually died a year after my brother suddenly died, and he died in August of 2021. I still help my dad, who's 91 and lives nearby. What we've been talking about today, interestingly enough, is priorities. Trudy talked about priorities and Carolyn talked about priorities. And then what's also interesting is when you had your conversation at the end of Carolyn's workshop, you talked about priorities too. So Jesus, you talked about the priority of making sure that the help was the help you needed and really organizing the help in the way that it was helpful. So let's think through our priorities and let's think through them by writing them. And I'm actually going to ask you to do some writing in the chat room. Okay, so here we go. So I'd love to know, what are your priorities? And when do you feel the pull of the priorities? So for instance, a priority for you today might be attending this event. But it could be that your priority later today might be something very different. So how do you figure out what the priorities are based on what's happening in this moment? In addition, okay, so wow, these are great priorities. So safety is a priority too. Knowledge is a priority. And I think there could be times during our day when you feel the pull of priorities. So for instance, I had talked earlier about my dad. He loves to be independent. Because he loves to be independent, he falls. So we have different priorities with my dad. He wants to be independent. We want him to be safe. And we have come to the conclusion, or at least I have, that at this point in his life, he just is always going to choose independence, and that's okay. So I am prepared with wound care in his apartment, and I am prepared to manage the wound care. Carrie has an excellent insight about when the pull happens. And the pull happens when something unexpected happens. So we have our plans, we think through what are the priorities for each point during the day, and then something unexpected happens. So there is a medical crisis, an emergency in the family, and then you think, how do I figure out these priorities? So for instance, I was just about to start a training on a Sunday, which is unusual to have a training on a Sunday, but it just so happened that I had a scheduled training on a Sunday, and it was starting at 11:30. And my dad called me at 11:30 in the morning. My dad rarely calls me in the morning. So when he calls me in the morning, I know it's going to be something horrible. So it was. He called to say that someone had stole $4,000 from him. He still does his online banking. So he had just checked his bank account. He had just recovered from a fall. So he was just feeling better and went online to check his bank account, and there was $4,000 missing. So I thought, okay, I have to do this training. So I talked to my dad for a moment. I said to the training program participants, I just need a minute to solve this problem with my dad. And then I called my brother, who's the calmer. He's also a CPA, and so he manages the money. And I said, Dad feels $4,000 has been stolen. Can you help with this? And so then my brother managed it. So the priority was to take care of my dad and to actually lead the training program. And I could do that by asking my brother for help. But it is those unexpected that will pull on you and think, what do I do? How do I take care of both situations, work and caregiving? Because there are times when they collide. I love to write 6-word stories. I first started writing them in 2010. It was Smith Magazine who started 6-word stories. And I find it so helpful just to get to the bottom line, which is why I like to write 6-word stories, because we just take out the filler and get right to the story. So let's write a story about how that pull feels, that tension between two priorities that are pulling at you at the same time. Feel free to start writing your 6-word stories in the chat room. I want to mention that there's a rule that you can use with 6-word stories, and that is unlimited hyphens. So for instance, you could say very, very stressful and hyphen very and very, and that's one word. So very hyphen stressful, that's one word. So you can use hyphens to your advantage when we're writing 6-word stories. So how does that pull feel when there's two priorities at the same time and you have to choose? You have to figure out a way to make something the higher priority. So what does that feel like? Oh boy. Okay, so Carolyn is kicking us off with a 6-word story that says, squeaky wheel gets my attention now. Wow. Right. Yes. Squeaky wheel. And then Sheila's writing, approved the first time out. Yes. Okay. Jesus is writing, overwhelmed by being cut with no plan ahead. And that's, I'm assuming, around a resource that has ended. So a program is ending. They just tell you, oh, it's Monday morning. Guess what? The program is ending Monday afternoon. And then you think, okay, so we got basically a minute's notice. And so the resource, the program, helped you manage life. And then when that program is taken away, you think, how am I going to manage all that is part of my life, which is caregiving? So Beth is writing, which problem affects the most people? Wow. Yeah, that's a good one, right? Yeah. Yeah. Which problem impacts the most people? And Sherry is sharing, Power Rangers got stronger once again. And Sherry actually joined our family emergency planning meeting yesterday and was sharing about Power Rangers as a inspiration for her to figure out how to describe what caregiving is like. So thanks for being here again, Sherry. Oh, okay. So Carrie is writing, be guilt-free today and tomorrow. Guilt-free zones are invaluable places in our life. And they also feel like elusive places in our life. Like, where do we go for guilt-free zones? And Cheryl is writing, indecisive, heavy burden, safety and health first. Thank you for bringing up the indecisive. It can feel like we can't make a decision, and stress takes away our ability to think clearly. And in order for us to make a decision, we have to think clearly. Stress steals that from us. And Kathy is writing, function by damping down the frustration, damping it down. I like that. I like that. I like that idea of damping down. And Beth is describing success. So she writes, success. Everyone is a little unhappy. I like that. I like that. Carlos is writing, learn that I can't control everything. Right. Okay, so that's our first 6-word story. So let's figure out the priorities. So I'd love for you to share in the chat room, who are your priorities? And you can name those as relationships. So it could be caree, it could be spouse, it could be kids, career, your own well-being. I'd love for you to describe the priorities. And then tell me, when are they your priorities? So who are priorities and when? Okay, mother and family all the time. Thank you, Tanika. It's okay to not be okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. Spouse and dog. Yeah, spouse and dog. Yes. Yep. Yep. One thing that was a priority for me that has kind of slipped, I've been having a lot of anxiety in my life, and the anxiety keeps me inside my apartment, which is not necessarily good, but that's just the reality for me right now. Something that was very important to me was swimming, and my parents knew it was a priority, and so they would ask me every day, did you get to the pool? One of the reasons they knew it was a priority was because I told them, I feel so much better when I get to the pool, and they felt better that I felt better, so would ask, did you get to the pool today? And that was a good way to remind me that that priority, which was important to me, was also important to my parents. Okay, so mom, myself, and always. Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, everyone has a different /own, so that's a hyphen, a slash, more important priority agenda, yes. Wife, kids, home, family, friends, support group, all the time. I like that. Husband, pets, work. Okay, this is really helpful. So let's write out how those priorities look when we think who's a priority and when. So just an example of how this can sound. So work is a priority for me at 9 a.m. So work is a priority at 9. I call my dad every day at 7. So dad is a priority at 7. So I stop everything at 7 o'clock to check in with my dad. That is the number one priority. And then work is the priority at 9. Everything else just kind of waits, so to speak. So what does that look like for you? So here's our second 6-word story. So start writing in the chat room when you're ready. Write out who's a priority and when. There's a couple other priorities that I have that aren't related to a time, but are related to a relationship. So if my dad obviously called at some other point during the day, that would be the priority. I would take that call. But I have other relationships in my life that I take the call. So I have a niece. I will take her call whenever she calls. So my niece is the priority when she calls. It's helpful for me if I think through the timing of the priority, because then I feel better that that is the priority. So it totally makes sense that work is the priority at 9 and dad is the priority at 7. Carolyn is writing self-care is a priority in the morning in the AM. Carrie is writing self and employees, day, parents, after. Okay, self, AM, self, morning, employees during the day, parents in the evening, dog and husband in the evening. Okay, I love that, Carrie. So you have figured out, based on the day, that in the morning, it's you as the priority. During the day, it's your employees. In the afternoon, it's your parents. And then in the evening, it's dogs and husband. So Jesus has a priority at 6 a.m. So he's the priority first thing at 6 a.m. for coffee. Love that. Yeah. Honestly, I would say coffee is the priority for me at 6:30. Absolutely. So Carolyn is writing business is priority during midday. And Cheryl is writing mom before work, lunchtime, after work, bedtime. So there's this pocket of time during the day where Carrie is important. So Sheila's writing her schedule. So work 8 to 4:30, mom all day long, whenever needed, right? So the priority is mom when she needs it. God, he's always there. Boo as I can fit in, me when I can fit in. Massage once a month, coffee daily. And then Carolyn is writing spouse as a priority at 7. Sherry is writing during the night, me, who's ever emergency to them. Okay. So let's just talk about ourselves. What are our priorities? So we know that our Carrie is an ever-present priority. We know that our career and our work is an ever-present priorities, but let's get a little specific and talk about our own priorities. You've already done this a little bit, so I'd love for you to expand on it a little bit more. When are you the priority? So I think sometimes I'm the priority at 4. I like to kind of finish work at 4. So at 4 o'clock, that might be time when I like to walk to our grocery store. It's not far from me. I just love to walk to the grocery store. I'm not sure what that's about, but it doesn't matter. I love to walk to the grocery store. So when I'm walking to the grocery store, that's the priority for me. And sometimes that will take place at 4 p.m. Yeah, so when are you the priority? Oh, I love outdoors at the end of the day. Thank you, Jesus. So you're the priority in the morning, and at the end of the day when you are outside. Yeah. Yep, the outside. You know, I just realized why I love to go to the grocery store. Because there is abundance in the grocery store. Holy Hannah, I could get ice cream, cookies, cake, and pie. I don't, but I could, right? It's there. I have a choice when I go there. And sometimes I think we have this idea that there aren't a lot of choices during our day, especially when it's work and caregiving. But boy, are the choices abundant and glorious in the grocery store. And I suppose that's why I like to go there. I like to look at the choices. I would love to be able to buy the donuts. I don't, but I love to look at them. Yeah, so Carolyn is writing me first thing, otherwise I get lost. Yeah, yeah. And Carrie is writing, going to bed on time is priority. And you guys are doing a magical job with the hyphens. Love them. And Cheryl's writing, before mom is up and then after her bedtime. So you have this window when you know that your priority is before mom gets up and then after she goes to bed. This is an exercise you could think about doing within your immediate family to see how they define their priority for themselves. Oh, Sherry, lying in bed, floating and thinking. I'll tell you what, there are times during my day where I think, you know what, I just have to lay on the couch for a minute and just have a daydream. That is a priority for me too. I love to float and think in a daydream. Just love that. Yep, just love that. It could be helpful if you do this during a family meeting to talk out what are the priorities, who's the priority when. And I think if you can do this in a 6-word story exercise, it gets rid of the fluff and the drama. Let's get to the bottom line. Okay, so here we go. So here are our last 6-word stories. And you could pick one, or you could pick all 3, or you could pick a different timeline that you'd like to think about your priority. So what's your priority for tomorrow? What's your priority this summer? What's a priority this year? I have gone through a spring cleaning phase. I started in February. I just finished yesterday. So I am going to enjoy the fact that I have actually completed the spring cleaning, except for windows, but let's face it, it's still too cold to do windows. So I released myself from the pressure of doing the windows. And I'm also going to pursue someone who I can actually hire to do the windows. So I am going to enjoy a completed spring cleaning. And that's the priority for me tomorrow. And the priority for me this summer is to actually swim outside and enjoy outside dining. And the priority this year is to continue to do good work. So Jesus, career change, learn, advocate, give back, be happy, be happy, be happy. I think that's so interesting, that whole happiness piece. I read a couple articles before we met today, and one of them was around money and happiness. You know how they always say money doesn't make you happy? It does. It does. And the research shows money is a part of your happiness. And we know that too with universal basic income, if you've ever followed that, where individuals get a certain amount of money that's actually counted on and given. And it could be through a program, it could be a city. When you have that and it meets your basic needs, that adds to your happiness. Okay, so tomorrow for Carolyn is family, summer outside, her year is to enjoy life. And Sheila, she's going to catch up on her reading and TV shows tomorrow and tell us what shows you're going to watch. Because I'm always looking for good shows to watch. Okay, so for Cheryl, it's church, yard, celebrate with family, self-care. I like that. I like that. Okay, you could do this exercise as part of journaling. If you ever do journaling at certain times during your day and you're thinking, okay, what am I going to journal about? You could journal a 6-word story about your priority. It could be the way that you set the intention for the day. The 6-word story about your priorities during the day, and then you could split it up into times during your day. You could also do 6-word stories about your meals. So for instance, the priority for your breakfast, what is that? For your lunch, for your dinner. Something that I have in the back of my mind, I'm trying to eat 6 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I don't always get there, but it could be that the priority is fruit for breakfast, vegetables for lunch, and then I have wiggle room for dinner. Oh, okay, so we actually have a list of TV shows that Sheila has shared. 911, Law and Order, FBI, Will Trent. Okay. So those are 6-word stories for you, and how to use them to create priorities, and then how to communicate what your priority is with others in your life. Because it can help for others to hear what the priority is for certain parts of your day. And it could be just, my priority right now is 5 minutes just to take a breath. Okay, just want to mention there are some resources that you can take advantage of. I'll put them in the chat room before we end this particular 50-minute time commitment, and that is, my books are free today. You can get them on Kindle. There's a free workbook that I created last year. It's called a workbook for your workplace resilience. That's free. And all our training programs are on sale, 30% off. So you can use a coupon code WFC. Okay, so we're going to pivot to our next presentation that I'm going to do. And I'm going to stop the recording and start it up again.